Lagoon in Micronesia, far out towards the middle of the Pacific, is perhaps the most famous wreck diving location in the world today. Known today as Chuuk, it is bounded by a 140-mile circular barrier reef, making it a sheltered atoll that became Japan's main World War II forward naval and air base. Its 50-mile wide lagoon was home to the Japanese fleet. Today, Chuuk Atoll holds more than 40 Japanese World War II shipwrecks, the legacy of the famous two-day strike by the 9 American fast carriers of Task Force 58 on 17th and 18th February 1944, codenamed Operation Hailstone. After arriving 110 miles off Truk Atoll in darkness and totally undetected, at dawn on 17th February 1944, 72 F-6F Hellcat fighters launched for an initial surprise fighter sweep of the atoll. In one of the largest aerial dogfights of World War II, the Hellcats downed scores of Japanese fighters and quickly achieved air superiority, allowing waves of US dive bombers and torpedo bombers to sink practically all the Japanese shipping found in the lagoon. Huge supply ships filled with munitions, tanks, trucks, bombs, naval shells, and thousands of troops. Some 220,000 tons of Japanese shipping went to the bottom of the lagoon, a two-day record for the entire war. Around 275 Japanese aircraft were destroyed, and in this video I'm going to look at perhaps the most famous of Truk's aircraft wrecks, a Mitsubishi G4M Navy attack bomber that lies in about 20 metres of water, just a few hundred metres from the artificial aircraft carrier-shaped Etten Island, formerly called the Japanese Takeshima Air Base, just south of Tonowas. The Allies allocated shortened reporting codenames to all types of Japanese aircraft. The Mitsubishi G4M had the Allied reporting codename Betty, and today this G4M at Truk is simply known as the Betty bomber. Japanese Navy pilots called the Betty the Hamaki, meaning cigar, due to its cylindrical cigar-like shape. But with unprotected wing fuel tanks, when the Betty was hit, it was common to explode or burst into flames, and the sight of a large bomber on fire streaking across the skies earned the Betty the Allied nickname Flying Cigar. The Betty was 66 feet long with a wingspan of 82 feet and carried a crew of 6 or 7. Powered by 2 Mitsubishi wing-mounted air-cooled radial engines driving 3-blade props, the Betty had a maximum speed of about 325 miles per hour and a service ceiling of almost 28,000 feet. This great speed, allied to a standard range of about 2,630 nautical miles, made the Betty a fine long-range bomber, able to carry about 1,000 kilograms of bombs or a single Type 91 aerial torpedo. It was a combined force of 85 Betty bombers and its predecessor, the G4M bomber codenamed Nell, flying from Saigon and carrying bombs and aerial torpedoes, that sunk the British battleship HMS Prince of Wales and the battle cruiser HMS Repulse, with great loss of life, about 200 miles north of Singapore on 10th December 1941, just days after the surprise raid into Pearl Harbor. And it was in a Betty that Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of the Japanese Combined Fleet, met his end on 18th April 1943, when his Betty was attacked and shot down by 16 American P-38 Lightning fighters in Operation Vengeance. No one today knows the specifics of how this Betty ended up here in Chuuk. It looks to have either been attempting to land or take off from Etten Island airstrip and hit the water hard enough to detach the 2 wing-mounted engines, which now lie about 15 metres apart, some 50 metres ahead of the fuselage. But the props aren't bent as you would expect if it had hit the water hard when they were turning. The glazed nose section is bent over to port, so if any aviation accident specialists are watching this video and can offer an expert view as to the mechanics of how this came about, please do so in the comments and add to the knowledge base about Chuuk Atoll. Corals hate the taste of aluminium, so most of the Betty's flight surfaces are clean, the flush riveting visible. But barring the damaged nose cone and detached engines, the main body of the Betty is still recognisable. The horizontal tail fins are still present, whilst the vertical tail fin has fallen over to lie in the seabed. Both side blisters can be identified, whilst the dorsal blister is open, the hatch in the upright position. I think that's the tail gunner's 20mm Type 99 cannon lying on the seabed just above the tail fin. It was a much heavier weapon than was normally carried on aircraft such as this at the time, and made an attack from behind the Betty very dangerous. The glazed bombardier's nose cone section and all the way back to include the glazed pilot's cockpit are all damaged and pushed over and pretty broken up, lying at the front of the plane on the seabed. So here, about 30 or 40 metres forward from the main section of the plane, is one of the two large radial engines just lying on the seabed, detached from its wing mount. And just over here to the left is the other engine, which is lying with its props down into the sand.
It's upside down, it's lying on its top.
Some distance forward of the Betty are the remains of two more aircraft, believed to be a long-range reconnaissance Jake seaplane and a Mitsubishi Roof seaplane fighter. An intact but upside down Mitsubishi A6M Zero fighter lies in about 8 metres of water not far away, and it is common to visit both wrecks in the one outing. If you want to read more about Operation Hailstone, the famous events and the shipwrecks of Truk Lagoon and indeed the aircraft wrecks, check out my book Dive Truk Lagoon.